a public square in Prague. The year is 1583. The crowd gathers, not for a market or a celebration, but to witness a punishment. At the center of the square stands a wooden structure, simple in form but sinister in purpose. From its top beam hangs an iron hook, swaying gently in the breeze. It's roughly the size of a human hand. Not a fishing hook, not a butcher's tool. Its curves were forged for one purpose only: to pierce human flesh. Its point has been sharpened to cut through muscle and skin. Its shape carefully designed to hold the weight of a living body, long enough that death wouldn't come quickly. This was the hook of the executioner, a device of both torture and execution used throughout Europe between the 10th and 18th centuries, built to kill slowly, painfully, and in full public view. The condemned wouldn't be hanged by a rope that snapped the neck in seconds, nor beheaded by an axe with one merciful strike. Instead, they would be lifted by the hook, driven through a rib, under the jaw, or through the stomach, and left to dangle as life drained away through pain, blood loss, shock, or exposure. It could take hours, sometimes even days, before the end came. Today, we explore the story of this horrific device, how it was used, who suffered beneath it, and what it reveals about societies that turn death itself into a public performance of cruelty. The hook of the executioner, known in German as Fleischerhaken or butcher's hook, was exactly what it sounds like. A tool borrowed from the butcher's trade, once meant to hang animal carcasses, now repurposed for human bodies. This transformation from commerce to cruelty reflected the medieval belief that criminals were less than human, mere meat, stripped of dignity and displayed as warnings. A typical hook was made of wrought iron, with a thick shaft for strength, a broad curve to secure the body, and a needle-sharp tip for penetration. Sizes varied, but most measured between 25 and 40 centimeters, large enough to hold the full weight of an adult. Some hooks had a single sharp point. Others had double or even triple prongs to better anchor the victim. They were mounted permanently on wooden poles, gallows beams, or even the outer walls of castles and city halls. Silent, ever-present reminders of the state's power to punish. The method of execution depended on the region, the crime, and the temperament of the executioner. In one common version, the hook was driven under the victim's ribcage, piercing between the bones without immediately damaging vital organs. The condemned was then lifted, hanging sideways. As the body's weight pulled down, the flesh slowly tore around the metal, until shock and blood loss finally ended their suffering. This method was excruciating, but not instantly fatal, which was exactly the point. In other cases, the hook was thrust under the jaw, through the mouth or throat, and out through the skull. Death came more quickly, but the image was just as horrifying, the victim suffocating or bleeding to death as the crowd watched. A particularly cruel variation involved driving the hook through the abdomen or back, carefully avoiding the heart and lungs to prolong the agony. The executioner's choice of where to insert the hook wasn't random. It carried symbolism. The body became a canvas on which justice was written. A hook under the rib might symbolize a traitor's stab in the back. Through the mouth, punishment for blasphemy or perjury. Through the abdomen, a symbol of gluttony or lust. Each wound had meaning, turning the victim into a moral lesson. This language of punishment transformed the execution into a public sermon, a theater of fear where law, religion, and violence merged into one. Historical records mention the hook of the executioner in many regions. In Amsterdam, hooks were fixed permanently to the outer wall of the Waag, the weighing house in Dam Square. Criminals were displayed there as warnings to all who passed. In Nuremberg, a city infamous for its torture instruments, the municipal executioner kept hooks in the Lochgefängnis, the whole prison, a tower filled with devices for extracting pain and obedience. Records from Prague, Vienna, and other cities of the Holy Roman Empire describe hook executions, especially during the wars of religion, when Catholics and Protestants punished each other with creative brutality. One of the most infamous cases took place in 1535 in the German city of Münster during the Anabaptist Rebellion. When Catholic forces recaptured the city, they made an example of the rebel leaders. Jan van Leyden, who had declared himself King of the New Jerusalem, was tortured with red-hot tongs for over an hour before being killed. His companions, Bernard Knipperdolling and Bernard Krechting, suffered the same fate. After their deaths, their bodies were placed in iron cages and hung from hooks high on the tower of St. Lambert's Church, where they remained for centuries as a warning to heretics and traitors. Those same cages still hang there today, empty, rusted, but visible. A chilling reminder of how religion once sanctified cruelty. The hook wasn't always used to kill. Sometimes it served as a tool of interrogation. A prisoner might be lifted briefly by a hook, just enough for the skin to tear and the muscles to strain, then lowered again for questioning. If they refused to confess, the cycle would repeat. Hook, pain, questions, silence, hook again. Even short sessions could cause permanent injuries, torn muscles, punctured lungs, dislocated bones. Survivors carried scars that marked them forever, living monuments of the state's power to wound. In some regions, this form of torture was considered an extension of a practice known as strappado, where victims were suspended by ropes tied behind their backs. But with the hook, the pain was far worse. Flesh didn't just stretch, it ripped. Why was this done in front of crowds? Why turn pain into theater? Public executions served multiple purposes. They were meant to deter, showing the terrible price of crime. They were meant to restore order, turning chaos into a ritual of control. They were meant to affirm power, proving that kings, judges, and priests ruled not just minds, but bodies, and whether admitted or not, they were meant to entertain. Crowds of every class came to watch. Merchants, beggars, children, nobles, all gathered as if for a festival. Execution days became community events, where the moral order was reenacted through shared horror. But not everyone agreed. Even then, voices rose in protest. Michel de Montaigne, the French essayist, wrote about attending public executions and feeling deeply disturbed. He argued that a society's true measure of civilization lay not in how it treated its law-abiding citizens, but in how it treated its criminals. Desiderius Erasmus, the Dutch humanist, condemned the cruelty of his time, questioning whether such punishments served justice or merely satisfied the crowd's appetite for suffering. These men were rare dissenters, voices of compassion in an age when pain was still seen as divine order. Yet their ideas planted seeds that would eventually grow into something larger, a revolution in how the world thought about punishment, justice, and humanity itself. As Europe moved into the Age of Enlightenment, whispers of reform began to challenge centuries of blood-soaked tradition. The hook of the executioner, once a tool of justice, started to look more like a relic of savagery. By the 18th century, philosophers, jurists, and reformers began asking questions that had once been unthinkable. What is the purpose of punishment? Is suffering justice or vengeance dressed as law? The most influential of these thinkers was Cesare Beccaria, an Italian jurist whose 1764 treatise on crimes and punishments became a turning point. Beccaria argued that punishment should never be cruel for cruelty's sake. The goal of justice, he said, was not to inflict pain, but to prevent harm. Torture, in his view, was both immoral and ineffective, a barbaric echo of superstition and fear. His ideas spread rapidly across Europe, influencing monarchs and lawmakers alike. Under Beccaria's influence, rulers known as enlightened despots, like Maria Theresa of Austria, Frederick the Great of Prussia, and Catherine the Great of Russia, were able to rule with a lighter hand. Great of Russia began to reconsider how justice should look in a modern society. While many of these monarchs retained absolute power, they sought to appear rational and humane. The executioners